but in this space, it was like this healing temple floating in what seemed to me like in the middle of the universe. I could see galaxies afar, but were like a very young universe. I could see universes being born, and I could see stars, and it was ever so close and so present. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Maria-Lupita Gurule. I am a soul reader, and I am also a certified medical support clinical hypnotherapist. And today I would love to be able to talk about my NDE and also the subsequent and multitude of spiritually transformative experiences that I've had. So I'll share a little bit of both. So my story began 24 years ago. I had my NDE, my near-death experience 24 years ago. I died on the day that my daughter was born. Not because of her birth, but because of a planned surgery that I was about to have. She was my second child, my second pregnancy, and I had two really difficult pregnancies. I went into toxemia, tons of conditions that created the situation that required that she be induced. So because I knew that I had difficult pregnancies, it was determined that I was to no longer have any other pregnancies. And so I had a planned tubal ligation. And so this happened on June 5th, 2000, on the day that my daughter was born. I died 3 hours after her birth. I was given an epidural for her birth, and they kept the catheter in my back so that for the surgery, I would receive a spinal block. The very last thing that I remember when I was in the birthing room was the anesthesiologist asking me if I was okay. I turned and I looked to the side where my mom was, and she was holding my 3-hour-old daughter. And in that moment, I began to lose consciousness. So, a spinal block is giving anesthesia beyond the dural sac directly into the spine. And I had to sign, of course, all kinds of different agreements to say that I was giving permission for this procedure, that there would be known complications. And one of the known complications of that is death. So, in this moment, when I was given the spinal block with the anesthesia, seeing my mom holding my daughter, I began to pass out. Now, I was supposed to be entirely awake and alert for this entire procedure, just like a mother would for a cesarean. I was only supposed to be numb from the waist down, but entirely awake and alert through the entire thing. And I began to lose consciousness as I was leaving the room. I remember the next thing of being out of my body and looking below and seeing myself being wheeled into the operating room. At first, I didn't even recognize that it was me. I thought it was somebody else and thinking, well, it's odd that they would have another person, being wheeled to the same place. When I realized that it was me, it was a moment of like disconnect. I had no attachment to the body that was below me. They had to wheel me from the birthing room to another area for the general operation. And I was out for approximately 8 minutes. I was in the operating room, and when they were getting the cart to resuscitate me, they had to resuscitate my heart and intubate me as well. And it felt as though I was floating above my body, seeing myself from above. As I was looking below, I could see the chaos that was happening, but I had absolutely no connection to it. In fact, I was going through one of the most difficult things in my life, and I probably welcomed it. It's probably why the near-death experience happened in the first place. So as I'm hovering above my body, suddenly I realize what's happening, that is me, but I don't have a connection, and I begin to turn over. And it had this sensation as though I was floating up into the ceiling. But the ceiling never seemed to fully open up. It's not like I passed through the building, because simultaneously at the exact same time, there was a pinpoint of white light that began to grow and consume the room. That pinpoint of light I now recognize was that proverbial tunnel that people talk about. This pinpoint of light began to grow in the entire room. And before I knew it, that sensation of turning over and rising up and entering into all of this light, it was as though I was standing in a space that was infinite and boundless, infinitely white, with nothing to be able to see, but yet everything to see from the distance. There was this sound that was like angels singing or angelic music, but there were no instruments and there was no singing. It was as though I could feel the love from the air itself. It was one of the most magnificent things I had ever felt. This love, if you can imagine the level of love that you could have experienced on earth, multiplied infinitely. And from this white, expansive place from the distance, I could begin to see what looked like this enormous and huge, larger than life, translucent image of a most beautiful woman. This most beautiful woman I recognized. See, my name is Maria Guadalupe. I am named after Our Lady of Guadalupe, who is the apparition of Mother Mary in Mexico. And when I saw her began to appear to me, this most beautiful woman, I had an instinct of knowing that that's who it was. She was translucent, meaning she was like see-through. And I was trying to like adjust my eyes, which sounds so strange because of course I don't have eyes in this moment, but I'm trying to adjust my vision to comprehend what I'm seeing. And this most enormous, beautiful image of her see-through, I could see this in her heart and in her chest, this most sacred heart, and this heart that had fire, this immaculate heart. I could see this blue and it was intertwined with red. And then piercing through it was this most magnificent white light that I knew was the source of all of this light that I was seeing around me. And as I was adjusting my sight to her heart center, I could begin to see, because she was translucent, see-through, that even bigger than her was this most beautiful, kind, gentle, loving image of a man, younger man. And to me, I knew that too, and could feel and sense that that was none other than her son, Jesus. And what I could see that their heart centers were connected. I could see that this blue light was hers, and this red fire these was also his. And piercing through that white is what I would call the God center of the universe. It was the most loving feeling I had ever felt. And it was though communication was happening, but there were no words. It's like telepathically in our minds, but felt like it was stemming more from our hearts, honestly. And I knew that I was not to be there, but I wanted to stay and I wanted to remain. I was going through one of the most difficult things in my life at the time that my daughter was born. And so I was looking for a way out. If I had not been pregnant with her, I do recall one moment when I was pregnant with her, holding my belly and crying while I was sitting in the tub, not wanting to be alive. And I knew that my daughter saved my life because I was pregnant with her. But the moment that she was born and I saw her in my mom's arms, I knew that she would be okay and I took my chance. But here I am on the other side in this loving light and I don't want to leave. I don't want to come back. And so I was given this opportunity to be able to go through an entire experience that I'm about to share with you. And that made me want to come back. So after seeing her and her entwined heart with Jesus, from there appeared before me a most incredible, benevolent being, also very stern though. I take this being now to understand that this being is my guide, but at the time I didn't understand that. It was just this being of light that had this sense of command about them. It felt more masculine, but it also at times it had like this nurturing. So it had like this combination of both energies. From that space of all that light, the image of Mary and Jesus began to dissipate and kind of like fade into the distance. And in this space, with this other light being before me, I was given an opportunity to go through the entire experience on the other side. So in this space, I was given an opportunity to do a life review. And before this individual, it seemed to appear that like three others also appeared, but this one being was always there. So another three beings appeared, and it was as though the thought of needing a space for this life review, it was as though there was this building that had like very soft, translucent edges, but not a building, but a space. And it was as though there was the thought of it was taking us towards it while simultaneously it was moving towards us. And in the distance, I could see like structures that seemed like buildings, but not buildings like what we know them to be. I could also see and sense that there were these lights that were like floating, and I understood that those lights were souls. And in this space, and as I'm watching this, it's like I arrive into this most magnificent room and space, this building. And these three beings are giving me an opportunity to review my life. And I am standing on a platform, and it looks like there's a podium, is the best way I could describe it, that had a book that was open. And this book had living images and other things within this book. And in this book, as I was looking at it, it was as though I could receive the image, and the images appeared like pictures. And so it was like this pit part was lifted out of the book and it came up. And then it was turned sideways and like infinite. So I can see like slices of my life. And in this review, if there was something that I needed to look at, it was as though this image that was living, moving, and in itself, but like a living photograph. And then it could be like cast up onto this massive, massive, massive image that was before me. And it was like a movie, but it was live, and I was seeing it. And in moments when I was having a lot of difficulty looking at the hardest part, the thing that took me to my near death, an event and a violation that I experienced, and a lot of things that I was about to face, I could not process it. I was still too bound to my earth emotion. So with it cast up on this, what seemed to be like a screen, but it wasn't an object. It was as though it was being shown to me in thin air, but similarly like a screen. And so there was moments when I could step into that moment, almost as if it was like a hologram, like I could be in that experience again, but seeing it from a different perspective. The moment could be frozen, and these three beings, and always the one also there, helping me, guiding me, showing me, and helping me to understand. But it was though like I had like a short circuit, because it was too big, too heavy for me to process. So from that moment of looking at that event, that violation, that horrific, violent moment, is that I was taken from it and then swapped into the place of the other. And suddenly I had awareness of their life, their energy, their experience, as though I was them. And I could actually see what caused it. And then it was too much to bear at that moment. So in this place of disconnecting, being pulled out of that experience to try to understand it, an additional three beings appeared. And then with the thought of needing healing because I was too tied to the human experience of it, still feeling it, I needed to receive care, and I call it first aid. It's like going to an urgent care. like a hospital to be able to receive spiritual healing on the other side. So these other three beings, and with the thought of needing healing, again, the space would be brought towards us as I was simultaneously moving towards this space. And in this space, it was extraordinary. Not as if it all wasn't, but in this space, it was like this healing temple floating in what seemed to me like in the middle of the universe. I could see galaxies afar, but were like a very young universe. I could see universes being born, and I could see stars, and it was ever so close and so present. And in this place, like this temple, there was like what looked like a pool, a swimming pool, but a pool nonetheless of this like liquidy gold, this liquid gold, this liquid light. And inside this space of this gold shimmering pool of water, I was immersed into it. And from that immersion of it, that I was still tied to my physical body, that I still saw myself as a body. And this was like acid burning away all of the imprints, the programs, the event. It was like burning away the human imprint and the bindings and the ties that I was still held onto and was still immersed in. And so with this liquid energy, it began to burn all of that away. And it began to give me distance from it as though I was looking at it like another person rather than being in the first person experiencing it firsthand. In this immersion of this liquid light, it felt, I have no words for it. It was the most healing thing where it's absolute utter bliss of like not holding on to any memories, minds, or ties. I felt myself as a pure soul in that moment. And after that healing pool of like being taken from this place, this like temple that had all of this energy, being taken back to by the other three, a group of souls appeared, these light beings that were helping me. And they brought me back to the place that I was. Okay, so again, thought the place would appear and then we would gravitate towards it simultaneously, like it being brought towards us and us going towards it. Being able to see that same experience again from a different experience, a different perspective. I understood the reasons, and more so that I agreed to it before it ever happened. And that was the most absolute shocking thing, that before I could understand that I myself participated in the creation of it, I needed to burn away the human bindings to it, the fear, the identity to it. And so I could finally see it from a different perspective, and that we had made an arrangement even before I came here that I would be doing this with these souls in the hopes that we're here on this earth plane to learn, in the hopes that they would learn enough that by the time that event would occur, that they could have potentially made a different choice. But I knew the potential that it could happen and that it probably would happen for the sake of this soul's growth, but as well as mine. And so I understood and I saw my life in an entirely different way. I could see that where I was so stumbling. And again, this life review wasn't as though I was in front of a judge. There was nobody judging me. I was looking at it myself. I was the one who was able to see, like, I didn't do that so good. I could have made another choice. I could have done something different. I realized that I participated in how I got there, when in life I was blaming others. And I finally understood the higher, bigger reason and purpose. So from that place, I was finally able to review the life without attachment and to have compassion for the me, the soul, the personality beyond my soul. Because this is like the Akashic Records, right? I have an infinite number of experiences. And I understood that in this place, when I was looking at my life review, it looked kind of similar to what you see behind me, is that this most magnificent light with all the galaxies, but understanding that we have all of these experiences, and my personality is like one book, but I've had many. We've all had many, whether we believe in it or not, it just is. We are an eternal soul. That's why we have near-death experiences, because my soul continues beyond my body. All of ours does. And that's what I learned most. So I began to look at my life in a very, very different way. And it shifted from a life review into preparation. So from that life review, finally understanding how and why all of that was created, an additional a third group of 3 people appeared. And again, always my one. In this new group of 3, they were able to take me to another location. So after I was like immersing myself in this library, soaking it all in, understanding everything, I was finally ready to see the bigger picture. So these 3 beings took me to what I call the edge of eternity. If you can imagine like a hill, like right here in this area, and looking at the galaxies ever so close. But it was like we were standing on a hill. And from the distance, I could see like a multitude of hills for as far as the eye can see. And it was of every different color of green, because it was like these beautiful rolling hills of grass. Before me, standing on this hill, there was this valley, and this valley held like so many different flowers, and flowers of every color that you could possibly imagine. Every color that we have on this earth plane, and in colors that I can't even describe. It's like I finally got to see what like ultraviolet looks like. Lucky for butterflies, they see it all the time, but I finally got to see in those spectrums. And I could see this sea of flowers, and every single flower was unique. Every single one had just a slightly different color that made it unique. And there were like billions. In this valley of flowers, that seemed to roll on forever, these beings that were with me were showing me the history of our planet, of our universe, of our galaxy, of how we play in the universe. And I could see these other galaxies, and even from the distance, like other universes. So it was like the matrix, the system within systems. And I realized that them showing me this valley, I love nature. And it was their way of being able to describe to me how this valley is like our earth, and it's all of the souls upon the earth at the same time. Every flower represented a soul, and that we were all here together by choice, and that we were all one, and that I was meant to touch every one of them. And in my limited understanding, asking these 3, how? How is that even possible? And in that moment, it was like a breeze came into this most magnificent space. And I could see all of the flowers in unison sway in this most gentle breeze. And then I was shown like the underside. So if you can imagine like being out in a garden and seeing the flowers on top, I was shown how the flowers underneath were all one root. It's like I can see all of their roots, but then all of their roots came together and were all one. And how they sprouted above were all individual. And then I was understanding that the color represents their personality, the uniqueness. Every single one of us is so unique in this universe. And all of us are so important that the very absence of us would send ripples through space and time, because we are all part of that whole. We're part of something extraordinary. And that what we are here to do on earth at this time is to learn how to be in unison, to be together, and to create that unity. And I saw in that moment such beauty in understanding how Earth was created, how our universe was created, why our galaxy was created, and that we've been part of it all. And I saw this energy of connections in everything. And I realized that I wanted to be here. I chose this. I wanted to be here. There are so many of us on this planet at this time that have made an agreement and a purpose to be like that avatar, to be a light bearer, to be able to shine light on the truth of who and what we are and why we're here. And it really truly just boils down to working together, creating this energy where there is a new earth, a new way of being and thinking. And that we are here to create that valley of paradise and these colors and working together because they're not my enemy. They're me. Underneath it all, they are all me and I am them. And that what I harm myself, I harm another. And if I harm another, it harms me because we are all part of it and that we experience it together. And I realize that I want to be here. I see now why I signed up. I didn't want to leave that most beautiful. If ever there was like the most magnificent view that you can possibly imagine on earth, and again, multiply that infinitely, it is something that is absolutely indescribable that we try to find words to describe, but is nearly impossible. But I realize that leaving this space, I chose it. We have a greater, bigger reason and purpose, that our earth holds a divine purpose within the universe at this time, that it is very critical for most souls to try to understand who and what and remember as fast as we can so that we can be part of the creating of this new earth because we're the ones creating it. And from this place of seeing this most incredible view of nature with the universe together, I was ready to prepare. So for my return, I chose and wanted to come back. I had made the decision on that ledge with the understanding of why I want to be here. So the original group of three and the second group of the healing immersing in the waters and this third group of three coming together, I was taken to another location, similarly to the one of the first life review, but in this space, it was like a room of councils, or my council room, I guess you can say. It was where another additional group of three helped me to not only review the past, that was the first group, but this group helped me to prepare for my return. It was as though I was going to school. I had groups and meetings with other souls. It's like I was studying for the things that I had signed up for in my soul's agreement, kind of gearing up and in the hopes that I would remember. One thing that I have not mentioned in these interviews is that during that moment, I embedded certain events and certain people, understanding that certain people and events in my life would show up to kind of jar me, to kind of get me, to remind me. And so I was looking at those moments to help me prepare for my return. It was also helping me to understand that beyond whatever problems are happening on the human level, to try to hold on to a sense of something bigger, to not fall into the smallness of the problems, but to try to hold on to the remembrance of, wow, how powerful we are, where we come from, and what we're here to do. Like we are warrior souls that soul signed up to be on this planet at this time that is most critical when systems are breaking around the planet and even all of the tumultuous things that are happening with the planet herself. You know, we chose to incarnate at a time that is most critical for the earth to transcend out of a lower density. And souls chose to be here. I was one, you're one that chose to be here to make that change. So I get excited about this and I forget that I'm talking about the NDE. So from this place, and I understood this by being in that place, in that hall, in the council of my soul, the council of souls. So it's like a hall where, but I had my own room and my own council. So I had time alone with these final group of three to help me prepare, remember, understand, embed certain events. And I had this remembrance at the time of like seeing another version of myself in these reviews, seeing the version of myself that first chose to incarnate, and then seeing myself in this new timeline of me being on the other side. And it was as though these two parts eventually merged because I finally had acceptance. And I was 3 weeks late in my own birth. It seems that my personal experience and my own soul's agreement would be very tied to life and death. That I almost died in birth. I was 3 weeks late. I did not want to be born. And I had two children, and one that almost died because of his prematurity. He was born 10 weeks early, my first son. So my experience in this life has always been tied to life and death, birth and death. And so I experienced out of my daughter's birth, my death. But then when I was able to understand what all of this was about, I saw myself at my own birth. And it was as though there was this pool beneath us, like not beneath us, but like imagine this window that just automatically is like flat, horizontal. Okay. It was like looking into a pool of eternity. But I knew that what was in that small basin, okay, not a full huge pool, but a basin of waters is what it seemed like, that was like a jumping into the life. So I saw like my infant self before birth, and then myself now after dying on the day my daughter was born. So I'm standing two parts of myself. And it's like as though this part of me now was telling the part of me then, it's okay. It's okay because we're going to do this, and I'm with you. And so in that moment, it was as though we had blended and merged. But I saw what looked like my infant self jump into that pool. And I was able to see and feel and sense myself in a stronger way. So it was like my new present self was giving my self permission to be born. I saw that I was, before that event, I was actually a soul that chose not to incarnate. It turns out that my mom had a miscarriage before me, and it was my soul not wanting to. And then I had another chance in the second time around that I chose to be born, but again, didn't want to because of the 3 weeks being late and the difficulty of my birth. So from that space of seeing me like jump into the pool, and then from me standing there saying, okay, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. And from that area, like the pool began to like fade in the distance. It was like as though we were in a new space, but we didn't go anywhere. And it was like I could see this council of 12, these four sets of beings of three, and then always my one for 13. And then I felt like I was ready. I felt prepared, and it was as though I had experienced an entirety, like a whole lifetime on the other side, just in order for me to be back. So from this final place, and it was as though I was standing in the center with this one guide next to me, and it had like an oval shape of all of my council, though all these 12 beings all around me, that I was finally ready. There was some exchanges and some other things that occurred in that moment, and especially from this one being that I know is like my guide. We are here in this lifetime, but we are not alone. And we may not hear, sense, or feel right away this presence, but we do. Many times, children who have imaginary friends are actually experiencing their guide as a child. And so this being is with us, always tethered, always ever present, and always ever guiding us. And we do have access to that. And I learned a way after my NDE. But for now, in this moment, skipping ahead, with this 12 around me and my one guide, it was as though that began to fade away. There's like this exchange and this like what felt more formal to me, as like this preparation. And I could feel like a graduation of some kind is kind of what it felt like. And that as it faded, I found myself in the original space that I first arrived. That felt like a lifetime ago. It was in that white expansive space without any boundaries or limit. Again, I saw the Blessed Mother in front of me, but she was more tangible, more solid, less translucent, and less see-through. She was smaller, even more human size. And standing beside her was my mother. And the Blessed Mother, La Virgen, she was holding a baby in her arms. And she kissed the baby and she handed her to my mother. And in that moment, panic set in because I had the human awareness. Oh my God, I just had a baby. And so I had this view of the Blessed Mother holding my daughter, giving her to my mother, and then myself here. And I understood in that brief moment the sacredness of this divine feminine energy that is coming back upon the planet to bring balance with the divine masculine. So both are divine. And I understood that I had a role and a mission to carry in this lifetime that I was not yet living up to. I was too focused on living the regular, status quo life, the cookie cutter life, the house that isn't a track home, where everybody goes to work at the same time. We have the two kids, the one dog, the mortgages and the job, and then that's all there is to life. There's more. I understood that we are a divine soul on a sacred mission, warrior souls that have chosen to incarnate here, whether we are aware of it or not. And that I chose to come back to be able to remember this so that I could share it. I knew in that valley of seeing all of those souls of the flowers, what that finally meant is just to take my place and finally agree to do the things that I originally agreed to. So from that place and that panic and seeing the Blessed Mother hand the baby over to my mother, it was as though I had turned, and it wasn't this pleasant, like, oh, everything's perfect now, and now bless you, you go. It was panic. And it was as though I had turned and I was beginning to run. And like I had jumped. And it's like I had taken a leap off of a 10-foot building, 10-story building, 10 foot, 10-story building. And it's as I jumped, it was like I jumped into that pool of water. I didn't realize it at the moment, but I jumped. And it's like I crash landed into my body. And I suddenly felt the pain of having a body. I could not move. I could not, nothing, I was paralyzed. I was still intubated. So they had the breathing tube and there was intubate. I felt like I was choking. It felt like I had been buried alive. I felt so much pressure and unable to move and unable to breathe in the right way. There was somebody at the head of the table holding my head and whispering into my ear in such a loving way, "It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay." And all I could feel was one single tear dripping down my eye. And in that moment, they continued and proceeded with the surgery. Even though I was supposed to be awake and alert, from that I was actually put under, and then they proceeded to complete the surgery. So I did have the tubal ligation. Had a very hard time coming out in recovery of the anesthesia. In the recovery room, they had to call my mother into the room. My mother had to help talk me into my consciousness, to be consciously aware and to hold it. My body was completely convulsing, shaking, and I just could not settle into my body. And my mom looked at me, just one look, and was like, Mija, ¿qué pasó? My daughter, what happened? And all I could tell her is, I don't know, Mom. I felt like I was buried alive. I had a lot of fear when I first came back. I couldn't talk about what happened. I could barely understand what happened. Here I am in the hospital for 3 days in recovery. And my daughter, I know, could sense it. She has always had a fear of losing me from the moment she was a child, and especially as a child. So, and she's 24 now, so thriving and fully growing and beautiful. But at the time, it was, through her whole life, this inner fear. I know as a baby, she must have been tethered because I can only imagine I held her for 9 months. So our energies were really, really tied together. In the hospital for those 3 days, she camped out on my chest. Even though I had an incubator not an incubator, a bassinet, right next to the hospital bed, I would try to hold her and set her down, and she would scream as though she was physically in pain. So I just learned to pile up a bunch of pillows, and there she stayed with me. And I finally understood why. Me understanding and remembering the complexities of all of my NDE came in flashes. It was very, very upsetting for me when I first came back. After my near-death experience, I had many out-of-body experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. And at first, it would take me directly to the other side. So it was as though I was back there, still with those group of individuals. And then I would wake up here. Many times I would be having nightmares. It was a violent process for me, very disconcerting. I had no foundation up until that moment about anything that I had experienced. I was born and raised, traditional Spanish, Hispanic Catholic. We were taught that this stuff is wrong and bad, and we don't talk about, souls and reincarnation and having abilities. So when I came back, I also began to have abilities. I could see, sense, and feel things about people that I shouldn't. I started to tell them things. I would find myself out of body quite a lot, and I would find myself still on the other side as though I was still in my NDE. And that's how come I'm able to retain so much information and knowledge and awareness of this. I journaled about it prolifically afterwards. I began to understand, well, guides. What are guides? What is all of this stuff about? And so I have been on this path for 24 years now. And what I understand today is so much more than I could even begin to describe or explain, in any length of a video. So this is my life's work. And so where I am today, based on my NDE, it opened up and exposed myself. It felt like I was raw in life. Not only did I have to still go through all that problem and still figure it out, and be alive in it, I had to also understand and learn how to operate an entirely new way, because I became like a medium and a psychic. I didn't understand this. How could I know these things? These are things that I shouldn't know about. And as I began to work with, because I still had a full-time job, when I was finally back at work and I was really opening up into all of this, I began to understand something is definitely off. I sought counsel, and my most beautiful brother, who's now crossed over, I sought his advice, and he's like, "Oh, loops, there are things that you should mess with. That's the devil." And I panicked in that moment, but I knew what I felt. I know that when I was working and felt connected, I felt closer to God than ever. It was like I felt like I was still on the other side, and I knew that this was good and right and pure. And it was my grandma, Genoveva, my mom's mom, who helped me. And she says, Mija, we're all born with gifts. Every single one of us, God gives a gift. And we have a choice in whether we're going to use that gift or not. And if you choose not to use it, you can pray and ask that it be taken away from you. And I did. For a long time, I prayed. And it wasn't being taken away because, yet again, wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, right? And so finally I said, okay, if you're not going to take this away from me, teach me how to use it. And so that is what I've become today. So today I have the beautiful privilege and the benefit after all these out-of-body experiences, spiritually transformative experiences, opening up into gifts, having connections even with, extraterrestrials. I know that that sounds so strange, but that's part of my experience, and that's a whole other video. So understanding we're star beings, what I'm here for, my purpose, working with my guides, working with individuals, and working with the Akashic Records. So I have the beautiful privilege and benefit of working with beautiful souls around the planet. I finally found a way to use the gifts that I was given and to not be afraid. I finally found a way to not be afraid being here. I'm so thankful that I am here. And never would I thought that I would have said that before. Even in all the trials that life still throws at us, because it still does. We just have another skill set to be able to tap into and use to help us through it. And that's what I hope to be. I hope to be that light to shine, to share what I experienced, not only from the NDE, but after, and so that we can help each other. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for allowing me to share just a sliver of my experience. And if you are interested in learning more or to finding more out about me, you can find me. I have a YouTube channel, and you can just search under my name, Maria-Lupita Gurule.com. So I thank you. I thank you for this experience, and I thank IANDS. Even though I was in this world for so long, I just barely discovered IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, 3 years ago, and it has been instrumental in my life, not only for understanding my near-death experience, but also understanding that when we have these experiences, we open up our souls into so many other capabilities, and those are called spiritually transformative experiences. So it was like my NDE was a gateway and an ability to be able to connect and have all of these because we're all meant to. And so many of us can learn how to tap into this without having to experience a death trauma. So if you're looking for resources and tools, IANDS is the perfect place. And if you're interested in learning more about me, I invite you to look me up, Maria-Lupita Gurule. Thank you so much for your time. May you be blessed always and in all ways. Thank you.